Linda Parker wiped the sweat from her forehead as she hammered the last nail into the wooden shelf. The old tool shed was barely 8 feet wide and 12 feet long, but it was home now. She had spent 3 weeks making it livable for her and her twin daughters. The concrete floor was cold, but she had covered it with old carpet she found at the dump. The walls were thin metal sheets that let in every sound from outside, but they kept out most of the rain. Amy and Beth sat on the small bed Linda had built from wooden planks and an old mattress. The 8-year-old girls watched their mother work without complaining. They had learned not to ask for things they could not have. Amy held a math book that was falling apart, its pages yellow and torn. Beth had a dictionary that was missing half its cover. These books came from the library's free pile, the ones too damaged to keep on the shelves. "Mom, when will we have a real house again?" Amy asked quietly. Linda stopped working and looked at her daughters. Their clothes were clean, but patched, in many places. Their shoes had holes that Linda covered with tape. But their eyes were bright and curious, just like their father's had been. "This is our real house now," Linda said, sitting down between them. "It may not look like much, but it's ours. And more important than the house is what we do inside it." She pointed to the corner where she had set up 2 small desks made from boards and metal legs. On the wall above them, she had hung a chalkboard she bought at a yard sale for $5. Math problems and spelling words covered the black surface. "Your education comes first," Linda continued. "Your father always said that knowledge is the one thing nobody can take away from you. We may not have much money, but we have our minds." Linda worked 3 jobs to keep them going. Every night from 10 until 6 in the morning, she cleaned office buildings downtown. The work was hard and the pay was small, but it was steady. During the day, she repaired old computers and televisions for people in town. She had learned electronics when she worked at the aerospace company, before everything fell apart. Her 3rd job was teaching her daughters. This was the job she cared about most. Every morning at 8, school began in the tiny shed. Linda had created lessons that were far harder than what most 8-year-olds studied. Amy could solve algebra problems that high school students found difficult. Beth could read and understand books written for college students. Both girls learned science, history, and literature from textbooks Linda found at used bookstores. "Today, we're going to learn about the solar system," Linda announced one morning in October. She had drawn planets on pieces of cardboard and hung them from the ceiling with string. "Mars is the 4th planet from the sun," Beth said, pointing to the red circle hanging above their heads. "That's right. And Amy, can you tell me how far Mars is from Earth?" Amy thought for a moment. "It depends on where both planets are in their orbits. Sometimes it's about 35 million miles away, sometimes it's over 200 million miles. Linda smiled. Her daughter had remembered the lesson from last week perfectly. The winter was the hardest time. The shed had no heat except for a small electric heater that Linda could only run for a few hours each day. The girls wore coats and gloves while they did their schoolwork. Their breath made white clouds in the cold air. One December morning, a woman in a business suit knocked on their door. She showed Linda an official badge and said she was from social services. "We've had reports about children living in inadequate housing," the woman said, looking around the shed with disapproval. "My daughters are well cared for," Linda replied calmly. "They're healthy, they're learning, and they're loved. This building isn't suitable for children. They need proper bedrooms, a kitchen, a bathroom with hot water." "We have what we need," Linda said firmly. The social worker looked at Amy and Beth, who were sitting at their desks working on science problems. "Girls, wouldn't you like to live in a nice house with your own rooms?" "We like living with our mom," Amy answered without looking up from her book. "Our mom is the best teacher in the world," Beth added. The social worker frowned. "Mrs. Parker, I'm going to have to file a report. If conditions don't improve, we may need to place the children in foster care." After the woman left, Linda sat down heavily on the bed. For the first time since they had moved to the shed, she felt truly scared. Losing her job, losing their apartment, even living in poverty. None of that frightened her as much as the thought of losing her daughters. That night, after the girls were asleep, Linda walked outside and looked up at the stars. The sky was clear and cold, and she could see thousands of bright points of light. She remembered her father telling her that each star was a sun like ours, maybe with planets and people looking back at them. "I won't let them take my girls," she whispered to the stars. "I'll find a way." The next morning, Linda used the last of their savings to buy something that would change their lives forever. She drove to the old research station outside town, where scientists had once studied radio signals from space. The place had been abandoned for years, and the owner was happy to sell the old equipment for almost nothing. Linda spent 2 days, hauling pieces of the radio telescope array back to their shed. The metal dishes and electronic equipment looked like junk to most people, but Linda saw possibility. "What are we going to do with all this?" Amy asked, helping her mother connect. "Cables. We're going to reach for the stars," Linda said, smiling for the first time in weeks. "If we can't have everything we want here on Earth, maybe we can find something better out there." She set up the equipment behind their shed, creating a small observatory in the empty lot. The dishes pointed up at the sky, listening for signals from far away. Linda taught her daughters how to operate the controls, how to read the displays, and how to search for patterns in the noise from space. "Why are we looking for signals from space, Mom?" Beth asked one evening as they watched numbers scroll across a computer screen. "Because someone out there might be looking for us too," Linda replied. "And when we find each other, everything will change." 10 years had passed since Linda Parker bought the old radio telescope equipment. Amy and Beth were now 18 years old, and their small apartment in town was filled with awards and certificates. The twins had become famous in academic circles around the world, though most people had never heard their names. Amy had solved mathematical problems that university professors could not figure out. She published papers about quantum mechanics and space-time theory that made scientists shake their heads in amazement. Beth had decoded ancient languages that had puzzled scholars for centuries. She could find patterns in any text or symbol system, no matter how complex or strange. Linda still worked at night cleaning offices, but now she also taught other families who lived in poverty. She used the same methods she had developed in the shed, proving that brilliant minds could grow anywhere if given the right care and attention. The old radio telescope array still sat behind their apartment building. Amy and Beth checked it every day, listening for signals from space. They had improved the equipment over the years, making it more sensitive and powerful. What had started as a desperate hope had become a serious scientific project. On a cold Tuesday morning in March, everything changed. Dr. Helen Cross sat in her office at the Global Communications Center in Colorado, staring at data that made no sense. 3 days ago, radio telescopes around the world had picked up a signal from space. It was not random noise or natural phenomena. The signal had structure, patterns, and what looked like mathematical relationships. "This is definitely artificial," she told Commander Jake Morrison, who had flown in from the Earth Defense Force headquarters. "Someone or something sent this message on purpose." Jake studied the printout spread across Helen's desk. Numbers, symbols, and wave patterns covered dozens of pages. "Can you decode it?" "That's the problem. My team has been working on this for 3 days straight. We've tried every code-breaking method we know. We've run it through our best computers. Nothing works." Jake frowned. The signal was clearly from an alien civilization, the first confirmed contact with non-human intelligence. World governments were panicking in secret. If they could not understand the message, they could not know if it was friendly or hostile. "We need fresh eyes on this," Helen said. "People who think differently than we do." She remembered reading about 2 young women in Montana who had solved problems that stumped everyone else. The Parker twins had never worked for the government or big universities, but their reputation for cracking impossible puzzles was growing. Helen found their contact information and made a phone call that would change human history. Amy answered the phone while Beth worked on a linguistics paper at their kitchen table. Their mother was sleeping after her night shift, and the apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. "This is Dr. Cross from the Global Communications Center," the woman on the phone said. "I need your help with a problem that's extremely important and extremely secret." 2 hours later, a military helicopter landed in the field behind their apartment building. Amy and Beth had never been in a helicopter before. They held hands as the aircraft lifted them above the Montana plains and carried them toward Colorado. At T, the Global Communications Center, Dr. Cross led them into a secure room filled with computers and screens. The walls were covered with printouts of the alien signal. "We received this transmission from somewhere in the Centauri system," Helen explained. "It's clearly intelligent, but we can't decode it." Amy studied the mathematical portions, while Beth examined the symbolic patterns. They worked in silence for an hour, occasionally pointing out details to each other. "This is beautiful," Amy said finally. "Look at how the numbers relate to each other. It's like music, but in mathematics." "The symbols aren't random either," Beth added. "They follow linguistic rules, but not like any human language. It's more like pure logic made visible." Helen watched as the twins began to work together, Amy focusing on the mathematical structure while Beth tackled the symbolic meaning. They wrote equations on whiteboards and drew diagrams that looked like nothing the government scientists had tried. "I think we need our radio telescope," Amy said after another hour. "This message isn't complete. There are gaps, missing pieces. We need to listen for more." "We can't move our equipment to Montana," Commander Morrison said. "This needs to stay classified." "You don't need to move anything," Beth replied. "We built our telescope from scratch. We can build a better one here." Over the next 2 days, the twins worked 18 hours straight. They designed and assembled a new radio telescope array using parts from the government's own equipment. Amy calculated the exact frequencies to monitor, while Beth programmed the computers to recognize pattern variations. On Friday morning, they received the complete message. "It's an invitation," Beth announced to the room full of scientists and military officers. "They're inviting us to join something called the Council of Worlds." Amy pointed to her mathematical analysis. "But there's a condition. They've been watching us, studying our civilization. They only invite species that meet certain requirements." "What kind of requirements?" Helen asked. Beth read from her translation. "Species that value wisdom over power, cultures that can sacrifice for the greater good, civilizations that understand that true strength comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down." Commander Morrison looked skeptical. "How do they judge that?" Amy and Beth exchanged glances. They had found something else in the message, something more personal and shocking. "They've been watching individual humans," Amy said quietly, "looking for examples of the qualities they value. And they found one story that impressed them," Beth continued, "about a mother who gave up everything to educate her children, who chose knowledge over comfort and sacrifice over selfishness." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. "They know about Mom," Amy whispered. "They know about the shed, about how she taught us, about everything we went through." "Doctor," Cross stared at the twins. "You mean your mother's story is why they're contacting us?" "Not just contacting us," Beth said, looking at the message again. "Testing us. This is the first test. They want to see if humanity as a whole can make the same choices our mother made." Amy nodded. "They're asking if we're ready to sacrifice our pride and selfishness to join something bigger than ourselves." Commander Morrison grabbed his phone to call his superiors. The twins' discovery would change everything. Humanity's first contact with aliens was not about technology or weapons. It was about character, wisdom, and the power of a mother's love to inspire an entire species toward greatness. 3 years after first contact, Amy and Beth Parker stood in a room that had never existed before on Earth. The walls were made of crystal that seemed to glow with its own light. Strange symbols moved across the surfaces like living things, shifting and changing as alien thoughts flowed through them. Ambassador Zephi looked like a tall human made of living glass. Light moved through its body in patterns that somehow conveyed emotion and meaning. When it spoke, the words formed directly in their minds rather than through sound. "Your species continues to surprise us," Zephi said. "Most civilizations, we contact immediately ask for weapons or power. You ask for knowledge and understanding." Amy and Beth had become Earth's primary ambassadors to the galactic community. They spent half their time in space stations orbiting Earth, learning about dozens of alien cultures. The other half they spent at home in Montana, teaching what they learned to other humans. Our mother taught us that knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied, Beth replied. Power taken is power lost, but wisdom given away grows stronger. The crystal being's light patterns shifted to what they had learned meant amusement. Yes, we have studied your mother's teachings extensively. The Council of the Wise has made her story required learning for all new species. President Karen Williams had tried to take control of the alien contact situation. She wanted military advisors and government officials to handle all communications. But the aliens had made it clear they would only speak to Amy and Beth. The twins had something the politicians lacked, the wisdom their mother had taught them in that tiny shed. Today we present your species with the final test, Zephi announced. The crystal walls around them changed, showing images of other worlds and civilizations. Many species reach this point. Few pass what comes next. Amy watched as the walls showed the rise and fall of galactic civilizations. Some destroyed themselves with wars. Others collapsed when their people became selfish and stopped caring for each other. A few managed to join the Council of the Wise and help guide younger species toward wisdom. What is the test? Amy asked. We offer you a choice, Zephi said. The walls now showed images of incredible technology, ships that traveled between stars, machines that could create anything from pure energy, medical devices that could cure any disease. We will give your species all of this knowledge. Your people will live longer, travel farther, and know more than they ever dreamed. Beth felt a chill of worry. What's the catch? The knowledge comes with a price. Your species must choose two individuals to serve as permanent ambassadors to the Council of the Wise. These individuals will gain access to all galactic knowledge and technology. They will live for thousands of years and help guide the development of countless worlds. Amy and Beth looked at each other. This sounded like an amazing opportunity. But, Zephi continued, these ambassadors can never return to Earth. They must leave their home world forever and dedicate their lives to serving the greater galactic community. The catch became clear. The aliens were offering Amy and Beth the greatest prize imaginable, but only if they abandoned Earth and everyone they loved. The Council has chosen you two as the ideal candidates, Zephi explained. Your intelligence, wisdom, and dedication make you perfect for this role. You would become among the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Amy thought about exploring distant stars and learning secrets that no human had ever imagined. Beth thought about communicating with civilizations that had existed for millions of years. The opportunity was beyond anything they had dreamed. We need time to think, Beth said. Of course, you have 3 Earth days to decide. Back on Earth, Amy and Beth sat in their old apartment in Montana. Through the window, they could see the shed where they had grown up. Linda was there now, teaching a group of children whose families could not afford regular school. This is everything we've worked for, Amy said quietly. A chance to learn and explore beyond anything humans have ever done, Beth nodded. We could help shape the future of the entire galaxy. Think of all the good we could do. But even as they talked about the amazing opportunity, both twins felt something was wrong. They walked outside to the shed where their mother was finishing her lesson for the day. How did your alien meeting go? Linda asked as the children left. Amy and Beth told their mother about the offer. Linda listened without interrupting, her face calm and thoughtful. What do you think we should do? Beth asked. Linda smiled the same smile she had given them when they were 8 years old and living in this same shed. I think you already know the answer. I taught you both that true success isn't about what you gain for yourself. It's about what you give to others. But Mom, this could help millions of people across the galaxy, Amy protested. And what about the people here on Earth who need help? Linda replied. What about the children I teach every day who could become the next generation of ambassadors? What about the families still living in sheds and garages, waiting for someone to show them that knowledge and love can overcome any obstacle? That night, Amy and Beth sat under the stars behind their apartment. They could see some of the alien ships in orbit, tiny points of light that moved too steadily to be natural. She's right, Beth said finally. If we leave, we're abandoning everyone who needs what we've learned. Amy nodded. The aliens are testing more than just us. They're testing whether humans can resist temptation when it means leaving others behind. Next morning, they gave Zephahai their answer. "We decline your offer," Amy said firmly. "You would give up immortality and unlimited knowledge?" the alien asked, its light patterns showing surprise. "Our mother taught us that the greatest knowledge is knowing when to sacrifice for others," Beth replied. "If we left Earth, we would be abandoning that lesson." Zephai's light patterns shifted to what they now recognized as deep approval. "You have passed the test. Your species has proven it understands true wisdom. The Council of the Wise has a different offer for humanity," the ambassador continued. "We will share our knowledge freely with your entire species, and we would like to invite your mother to serve as Earth's representative to the Council." Amy and Beth stared in shock. "Our mother?" "Linda Parker has already demonstrated the wisdom we seek. Her story of sacrifice and dedication has become the standard by which we judge all civilizations. Who better to represent humanity than the woman who embodies its greatest virtues?" 1 year after Earth passed the galactic test, Amy and Beth Parker flew home to Montana in a ship that moved faster than light. The technology the aliens shared had changed everything on Earth. Clean energy powered every city. Diseases that had killed millions were now cured in minutes. Food grew in deserts, and the oceans were cleaner than they had been in centuries. But as their ship approached the small town where they grew up, Amy and Beth felt nervous. They had spent the last year traveling to alien worlds, learning about civilizations that were older than human history. They had seen wonders that no human had imagined. Yet all they wanted now was to see their mother again. The ship landed in the same field where the old helicopter had picked them up years ago. A crowd of people waited for them, including news reporters, government officials, and scientists from around the world. Everyone wanted to meet Earth's famous ambassadors. Amy and Beth ignored them all. They walked straight to the small apartment building where they had lived since leaving the shed. Linda was waiting for them on the front steps, wearing the same, simple clothes she had always worn. She looked older, but her smile was exactly the same. "Welcome home," Linda said, hugging both her daughters at once. "Mom, we have so much to tell you," Amy began. "And I have something to tell you too," Linda replied. "But first, let's go see the old shed." The three women walked behind the apartment building to where the tool shed still stood. But now it was different. The shed had been turned into a monument with a bronze plaque that read, "Where humanity's greatest lesson was taught, that love and sacrifice can overcome any obstacle." Hundreds of people came to visit the shed every day. They brought their children to see where the Parker family had lived and learned. The simple building had become a symbol of hope for families around the world. "They want to make it bigger," Linda said, looking at the shed. "Turn it into a museum with gift shops and tour guides." I told them no. "Why?" Beth asked. "Because the shed isn't important. What happened inside it is important. If we make it fancy, people will focus on the building instead of the lesson." A group of children ran up to them, followed by their parents. The kids recognized Amy and Beth from news broadcasts about their alien adventures. "Are you really space ambassadors?" a little girl asked. "We're just students," Amy replied, kneeling down to the girl's level. "We're still learning just like you." "My mom says you met real aliens," a boy said excitedly. "We did," Beth answered. "And you know what they told us? They said Earth has the best teachers in the galaxy." The children looked confused. "Really? Really? And the best teacher of all lives right here in Montana." Beth pointed to Linda. "She taught us everything we needed to know to talk to aliens, and she did it in that little shed." The parents smiled as their children stared at Linda with new respect. Here was an ordinary woman who had raised the two most famous people on Earth. That evening, President Karen Williams arrived with a convoy of black cars and security guards. She had flown from Washington to personally thank Amy and Beth for their service to humanity. "The nation owes you a great debt," the president said during a ceremony in the town hall. "You have brought honor and advancement to our entire species." "Thank you, Madam President," Amy replied politely. "But we couldn't have done any of this without our mother's teaching." President Williams nodded toward Linda, who sat quietly in the back of the room. Mrs. Parker, the government would be honored to provide you with a house worthy of your contributions. We could arrange a mansion in any city you choose. Linda stood up slowly. Thank you for the kind offer, but I'm happy where I am. But surely, you deserve better than a small apartment after everything your family has accomplished. I have everything I need, Linda said firmly. My daughters are healthy and doing good work. I have students to teach and a community that supports me. What more could I want? The president looked confused. Most people would jump at the chance for wealth and luxury, but Linda Parker was not most people. After the ceremony, Amy and Beth walked with their mother back to their apartment. The streets were full of reporters and curious visitors, but the three women moved through the crowd quietly. Mom, Ambassador, Seth High wants to meet you, Beth said when they were finally alone. The Council of the Wise has officially invited you to represent Earth in the galactic community. Linda sat down at the kitchen table where her daughters had done homework for so many years. What does that mean exactly? You would advise other species on education and civilization development, Amy explained. Your teaching methods are being studied on dozens of worlds already. And you would help decide which new species are ready to join the galactic community, Beth added. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Would I have to leave Earth? No, Amy said quickly. They want to build a galactic education center right here in Montana. You could teach students from all over the galaxy without leaving home. They specifically requested that it be built around the shed, Beth added with a smile. They say it represents the kind of humble wisdom the galaxy needs. Linda looked out the window at the old shed, now surrounded by flowers that visitors had left. Students from other worlds? Beings who are struggling with the same problems we once had, Amy explained. Species that are smart but haven't learned wisdom yet. The council thinks you're the perfect person to teach them. Because you already proved you can take someone with nothing and help them reach the stars, Beth said. Linda smiled. I didn't do that. You girls reached the stars on your own. I just gave you the tools. And that's exactly what the galaxy needs, Amy replied. Someone who knows how to give others the tools to succeed. The next morning, Linda Parker accepted the position as Earth's first galactic education coordinator. Construction began immediately on a facility that would house students from across the known universe. The center would be built around the old shed, preserving it exactly as it had been during those difficult years. As bulldozers and construction crews arrived, Linda stood looking at the small building where her family's greatest adventure had begun. Soon, beings from distant stars would come here to learn the same lessons she had taught Amy and Beth, that knowledge grows when shared, that wisdom comes from sacrifice, and that love can overcome any obstacle. Ready for the next chapter, Mom? Amy asked, standing beside her. Ready, Linda replied, watching as workers carefully placed protective barriers around the shed. Let's see what we can teach the galaxy. 10 years later, Linda Parker stood in front of a classroom unlike any that had ever existed. Her students came from 7 different worlds. There was Crix, a young being from a planet covered in ice whose people communicated through color changes in their skin. Next to him sat Thyra, whose species looked like walking trees and lived for thousands of years. In the back row, 3 small creatures from a desert world worked together on a math problem, their 6 arms moving in perfect coordination. But the lesson Linda taught was the same one she had given Amy and Beth in their tiny shed years ago. Knowledge isn't about what you have, Linda said, writing on a board that translated her words into dozens of languages at once. It's about what you do with what you've been given. The Galactic Education Center had grown around the original shed, but the small building remained at its heart. Students from across the galaxy came to see where humanity's greatest lesson had been taught. They learned not just facts and skills, but wisdom and character. Linda was now 72 years old. Her hair was completely gray, and she moved more slowly than she once had. But her mind was as sharp as ever, and her voice still carried the authority of someone who had raised 2 daughters to change the world. Amy walked into the classroom as the lesson ended. She was now 43, and directed humanity's first research station orbiting Alpha Centauri. Her work there had led to discoveries that advanced science across multiple species. but she still came home to Montana every few months to help her mother teach. "How did today's lesson go?" Amy asked as the alien students filed out of the room. "Crix is struggling with the concept of sacrifice," Linda replied. "His people believe that giving up anything for others is weakness." "What did you tell him?" Linda smiled. "I told him about a mother who lived in a shed so her daughters could reach the stars. Sometimes the old stories work better than new theories." Beth entered the classroom carrying her newest grandchild, a baby girl named Hope. Beth had married a linguist she met while working for the Galactic Council, and they had 3 children together. All of them were being raised with the same values Linda had taught in the shed. "The council meeting went well," Beth reported. 2 more species have been approved for membership. Both of them specifically mentioned your teaching methods as part of their application." Linda looked out the window at the massive complex that now surrounded the shed. Students from dozens of worlds lived and studied here. The facility had its own spaceport, research laboratories, and living quarters designed for beings with different environmental needs. But at the center of it all was the 8 by 12-foot shed where everything had started. "Sometimes I wonder if we're making this too complicated," Linda said. "All those fancy buildings and high-tech equipment. The most important lessons I ever taught happened in a room barely big enough for 3 people. But now those lessons are reaching millions of beings across the galaxy," Amy pointed out. "The Parker method is used in schools on 47 different worlds." The Parker method had indeed transformed education throughout known space. It emphasized creativity over memorization, character over intelligence, and the importance of family and community support. Students learned to solve problems by working together rather than competing against each other. They were taught that true success came from lifting others up. A chime sounded, indicating that the afternoon session was about to begin. Linda gathered her materials and headed for the door, then stopped. "I want to check on something first," she said. The 3 generations of Parker women walked to the original shed, which was now protected behind glass walls, but remained exactly as it had been during those difficult years. The old bed was still there, along with the homemade desks and the blackboard covered with math problems. A group of young aliens stood outside the display, reading the information panels that explained what had happened in this small space. Their guide, a human teacher trained in Linda's methods, was telling them the story. "The mother and her 2 daughters lived here for 3 years, the guide explained. They had no money, no comfort, and no help from anyone. But they had something more important. They had love, determination, and the belief that education could overcome any obstacle." One of the young aliens, a being that looked like a dolphin with arms and legs, raised a fin-like appendage. "How did such a poor family create such successful children?" "That's the lesson we're all here to learn," the guide replied. "It wasn't the building that mattered. It was what the mother taught inside it. She showed her daughters that knowledge is more valuable than wealth, that sacrifice for others is the highest form of strength, and that love can overcome any hardship." Linda watched from behind the group, tears forming in her eyes. She had never expected her simple efforts to educate her daughters would inspire beings from across the galaxy. "Grandma Linda," Hope said in her small voice, "tell me the story about the shed." Linda picked up her great-granddaughter and held her close. Once upon a time there was a mother who had nothing left in the world except her 2 little girls. She could have given up and let other people take care of them. Instead, she decided to teach them that they could achieve anything if they worked hard and cared for each other. "Did they really go to the stars?" Hope asked. "They did more than go to the stars," Linda replied. "They brought the stars to us." As the sun set behind the mountains, Linda looked around at the complex that had grown from her simple dream of giving her daughters an education. Students from distant worlds walked between buildings, discussing lessons and sharing knowledge. In the research centers, human and alien scientists worked together on projects that would benefit all species. But the most important work still happened in classrooms like the one where Linda taught every day. Young minds learning not just facts and formulas, but wisdom and compassion. Students discovering that their greatest strength came not from what they could take, but from what they could give. The shed had become the unofficial heart of galactic civilization, not because of its technology or grandeur, but because it represented something all intelligent species could understand, the power of love to transform ordinary people into something extraordinary. "Mom," Amy said quietly, "you did it. You really did teach us to reach the stars." Linda smiled, still holding her great-granddaughter. "No, I just taught you to reach for them. You did the rest yourselves." As night fell over Montana, lights twinkled in the sky above them. Some were stars, some were planets, and some were ships carrying students from distant worlds to the place where humanity's greatest lesson was still being taught every day. In a small shed behind an apartment building, a mother's love had planted seeds that grew into forests of hope across the galaxy.